Garrett Black. Lesson plan using СLIL technology. Intermediate EFL students, ages from 12 to 14. Lesson time 60 minutes. Lesson topic: Water cycle in nature, biology. Previous knowledge, skills. The students already understand the three states of things: solid, liquid, gases. Students have background knowledge of words related to nature, weather, and natural phenomena: rain, rainbow, snow, sun, clouds, fog. Lesson objectives. Number 1. To develop in students an understanding of what the water cycle is in nature. Study the stages of the water cycle. Number 2. Learn new words in English related to the water cycle in nature. Number 3. Teach students to communicate fluently in English on topic biology. Learning objectives. Number 1. Content-related purpose. Study all stages of the water cycle in nature, like evaporation, condensation. Understanding these stages. Number 2. Goal related to the development of communication skills. Be able to describe each stage of the water cycle in nature. Number 3. Goal related to cognition. After their lesson, students should have a clear understanding of what the water cycle is and why is it so important. Number 4. Educational purpose. The lesson must contain an environmental component. Students should understand why it is important to save water and not to pollute it. Planned learning outcomes. Number 1. Students will be able to understand the features of each stage of the water cycle in nature and describe it. Number 2. Students will be able to use special vocabulary from the biology section. Number 3. Students will be able to explain why the water cycle in nature is so important. Why is it so important to preserve the water resources of our planet? What we need for this lesson: whiteboard and whiteboard markers, projector, computer, special programs for their use, pre-prepared videos on YouTube about the water cycle in nature, printed handouts, cards with words. This can be printed and laminated cards. Worksheets. During the classes. Warm-up 10 minutes. The teacher should greet the students and introduce the topic to them. Next, the teacher should ask students what they already know about weather and nature. Let's remember some vocabulary that may be useful to us in class. Evaporation. Water evaporation occurs when the sun heats up water in rivers, lakes, or the ocean. Condensation. Condensation happens when water vapor in the air cools down and turns back into liquid water. Precipitation. Precipitation can fall as rain, snow, sleet, or hail depending on the temperature. Collection. Collection is the process where water gathers in oceans, rivers, lakes, or other bodies of water. Water vapor. Water vapor is invisible and forms from water evaporation. Clouds. Clouds are formed from tiny droplets of water or ice crystals that have condensed from water vapor. Rain. Rain is the most common form of precipitation and is essential for watering plants. Snow. Snow forms when water vapor in the clouds freezes into ice crystals and falls to the ground. Sun. The sun plays a crucial role in the water cycle by providing the energy needed for evaporation. Cycle. The water cycle is a continuous process that moves water around the earth. Transpiration. Transpiration is the process where plants release water vapor into the air through their leaves. Runoff. Runoff occurs when excess water flows over the surface of the land into bodies of water. Groundwater. Groundwater is water that has soaked into the soil and is stored underground. Infiltration. Infiltration is the process by which water on the ground surface enters the soil. Atmosphere. The atmosphere is where water vapor rises and condensation occurs to form clouds. Example sentences. Evaporation. During the hot summer days, evaporation from the lake increases significantly. Condensation. We observed condensation forming on the outside of our cold drinks. Precipitation. The forecast predicts heavy precipitation tomorrow, so don't forget your umbrella. Collection. After the rain, collection of water in the reservoirs ensures we have a steady water supply. Water vapor. You can't see water vapor in the air, but it's always present. Clouds. The sky was full of fluffy white clouds drifting slowly by. Rain. The steady rain helped to replenish the dry soil. Snow. We woke up to a beautiful blanket of snow covering the ground. Sun. The sun heat is a crucial factor in the process of evaporation. Cycle. The water cycle is a natural process that helps to maintain life on Earth. Transpiration. Plants release water into the atmosphere through transpiration. Runoff. After the storm, the streets will fill with runoff flowing into the drains. Groundwater. Many communities rely on groundwater for their drinking water supply. Infiltration. Good soil structure promotes infiltration, which helps to recharge groundwater supplies. Atmosphere. The atmosphere contains a large amount of water vapor that eventually forms clouds. The stage number 2, Introduction. The teacher writes the topic of the lesson in large letters on the board. Next, the teacher turns on the projector and the whole class watches a video about what the water cycle is in nature. The next stage, presentation, 15 minutes. The teacher divides the class into mini groups. Each group must present one stage of the water cycle in nature, explain the keywords, condensation, evaporation, precipitation, etc. Handouts are used as supporting materials. An example of handout material: the water cycle, also known as the hydraulic cycle, describes the continuous movement of water on, above, and below the Earth's surface. This cycle includes several stages: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. Each stage is critical to maintain the balance of water in our environment. Instructions for preparing for the presentation. Your group should talk about one of the stages. Imagine that your comrades know nothing about this stage. Talk about this stage simply, in your own words, using keywords. Try to make your presentation creative. For example, you can use pictures and diagrams. You can even act out a short skit with a drop of water playing the main role. Recommended keywords: evaporation, condensate, precipitation, collection, transpiration, stock. Interpretation of the most important concepts: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, collection, transpiration, stock. Additional tips: try to speak clearly so that your comrades understand what is special about the stage that you're describing. Visual materials will help you present information in an accessible form. Practice your speech. Your group can be represented by one person or several people. The choice is up to you. Encourage active participation of other groups. Ask questions, include them into the discussion. The next stage of the lesson is practice, about 20 minutes. This task is also done in small groups or in pairs. Practice, 20 minutes. This task is also done in small groups or in pairs. But this time, the teacher must divide the students into groups differently. Students must complete a worksheet describing one of the stages of the water cycle. To do this, the teacher distributes vocabulary cards to the students. These cards will allow students to ask each other questions about key terms. Handout: stage of the water cycle. Condensation. Instructions. Your group works with only one stage of the water cycle in nature. You should not consider the remaining stages. Pay attention to the handouts and the vocabulary cards you received from the teacher. They will help you complete this task correctly. Define the condensation process. Correct answer. Definition: condensation is the process by which water vapor in the air cools and turns back into liquid water droplets. Explanation: as warm air rises, it cools and loses its ability to hold water vapor. When water vapor cools, it condensates into tiny droplets of liquid water, forming clouds. The necessary vocabulary: water vapor is the gaseous form of water present in the air. Cooling is the process of lowering temperature. Liquid droplets are small drops of liquid water formed from condensed water vapor. Clouds are collections of tiny droplets of water or ice crystals suspended into the atmosphere. Worksheet: descriptions of condensate. Condensate is when? Why is condensation important to the water cycle? Use keywords in sentences: water vapor, cool, drops of liquid, clouds. Describe these questions with your group. When water vapor condenses, the process of creating clouds. Does condensation form when air is cooled or heated? Why? Vocabulary cards are used to ask each other questions about a given topic. Plan for working with vocabulary cards. The first group member must take a card and asks the question to the rest of the group. In turn, the rest of the group must define this term and write 5 sentences using this term. After this, you put the used card aside. The next person in your group picks up the next card. The game continues until you have used all the cards given by the teacher. Individual task, 10 minutes. Each student must write a short essay to explain why the water cycle is important to our planet. Students then share their essays with each other and evaluate each other. Peer review. Conclusion, 5 minutes. The teacher briefly repeats the main points of the lesson and tries theses on the board. Students are encouraged to ask their questions. The teacher answers every question. The teacher gives the students homework. Watch the video. Draw from memory and label the diagram of the water cycle. Lesson results assessment. Number 1. Formative assessment. During group discussion, the teacher walks around the room and listens carefully to what the students are discussing in groups. Then the teacher checks the worksheets and materials created by the students, diagrams, drawings. Number 2. Teacher sums up the lesson. The teacher evaluates the written essays to understand whether the students use vocabulary correctly and whether they understand the topic of water cycle.